morally wrong to impose life on an individual who does not wish to live. If we saw an animal in such pain and suffering, it would be seen to us that the right thing to do is put the animal down, as it is cruel to keep the animal alive and living in such pain. If we can do that to animals and they have rights, then therefore should we be allowed to put ourselves or others out of pain when terminally ill. If a person is in a vegetative state and they can feed, breathe, speak, etc., and they were in severe pain, shouldn't they have the right to die?
Can we go then to Mandy? Do you have anything to add or develop on that?
Yeah, I do actually. I personally feel quite strongly about this subject, having had relatives and friends that sadly are no longer with us, who have wanted to end their life because they were at final stages of cancer, for example, and weren't able to make that decision. Now, in hospitals at the moment, the staff are fantastic, they work very hard to care and to do everything that Dee's just talked about. But sadly, it is still very much a case of keeping people in a responsive state in the hospitals, keeping people alive, and not allowing them that choice to end it, I suppose. I belong to an organisation called Dignity in Dying, and within that, it's an organisation that is looking for legislation to be changed so that people that have been diagnosed as terminal for 6 months, with only 6 months or so to live, that they will have that choice as to what to do about the last days of their lives. Obviously, it's really important to put safeguards in place. I'm not advocating that everyone just sort of willy-nilly decide to end it all. But these safeguards in place will involve, obviously, counselling, would involve 2 doctors agreeing that this person is terminal, and would look to allowing that person that dignity to choose to end it. As you say, you know, if an animal was in that situation, we wouldn't think twice about putting them, you know, allowing them to be put out of their misery. So personally, I very strongly believe that people should be given a choice.
Until major polluting countries such as America and China engage in finding ways of reducing their CO2 emissions, only steps Britain takes are purely symbolic. I believe that we should protect the environment and it should be our main priority. The government promotes reducing CO2 emissions and raises taxes on pollution. However, they are planning to build coal-fired power stations, which seems hypocritical. The UK has committed to international and European targets to reduce CO2 emissions, but compared to that produced by major industrial nations, our contribution is meaningless unless we fully commit to promoting emissions reduction and carbon neutral future, then why bother? We could instead reap the rewards of natural resources for the benefit of British people.
Thank you very much. I think if we start with Mandy.
All right.
Yeah.
I'm feeling. Quick question to the audience, I guess, first of all, before I start, and that's, do you believe in climate change, or is it, climate change, not happening? It's an interesting debate, isn't it, and one that, you know, lots of people are still arguing about. However, there's been lots of research, and in fact, some of the most recent research has finally agreed, after talking to thousands of experts, looking at hundreds of thousands of studies, and has agreed that climate change is happening, and it is mainly man-made. You know, it's because of what we're doing on the planet. So if we agree that, then obviously we have to do something about it, because, all right, you know, some of us are getting a little bit older and we might not be around at the time when everything does start to completely fall apart, but we are seeing the changes now, which means that you guys and your children and your children's children will be seeing what happens in years to come through climate change. So it is really, really important that we now have a responsibility to do something about it. So the question if there are big countries like China and the US aren't doing something about it, then why should we bother? Let's all just stick our heads in the sand and completely ignore it. But actually, things are starting to happen. For a start, just recently, just last month, the US and China have started to negotiate some actual agreements to reduce CO2 emissions. China has agreed to stop relying so much on coal for its fuel and is actually investing a lot of money now in renewable energy, including solar and hydropower and wind farms. There is an agreement not far away from the EU agreements about where limits should be in order to make sure that the temperature of the Earth stays pretty much the same. Anyway, to get back to the actual question, in terms of should we do nothing if other places aren't doing anything, well, absolutely we should. We should be leading the way. We should be the role models that are showing what can be done and helping others to learn from that. And just in case you didn't know, actually here in this country, we're responsible for a lot of the problems in China and in other countries, India. So a lot of the emissions that are caused over there are because of the products that we're buying and importing. So all the time that we're buying products from China and from India, from lots of the cheap shops that are then imported over. In fact, if you actually look at our carbon footprint, ours is worse than somebody in, say, Germany, where they do so much more of their manufacturing actually in their home country. So there's still a lot that we can be doing that not only acts as a role model and says, right, if we as a country can invest in renewables and do all these things to save the environment, you should be doing it as well. But also, we should be looking to reduce our consumption of things that come from outside as well as much as possible. So in a nutshell, absolutely we should carry on.
Any questions from the floor? Any students? Yes, gentleman in the middle.
Is the falling price of oil good news for everyone?
And who's that directed at?
Mandy.
Oh, thank you. Is the falling price of oil good news for everyone? In terms of oil, we rely on it far too heavily for everything. Even the glasses that we use, the tables that we sit at, the cars that we drive, absolutely everything is currently reliant on oil. The falling price of it will only be temporary. If you've been on this planet any length of time, you'll see that it's cyclical. It goes up, it goes down, it goes back up, it goes back down. My concern is about our reliance on it, not the cost of it, but our actual reliance on it. Eventually, it will run out, and so it doesn't matter whether it's expensive or cheap. There won't be any of it for us to use. So where we should be investing the money is on things that are going to give us that energy, so that the lights don't go out, but that is renewable, that is something that we can sustain over a period of time.
Yes, you've got a response.
Oh, sorry. Do you think though that the oil price has fallen and it will stay low for a while now?
I don't work in the oil industry.
No, okay, sorry.
But yes,
but now it has fallen. Do you think there is less than the government will see less of a need to invest into greener technology because the prices come down? So we're not worried about it anymore because I can fill my car for cheaper. So why would I talk about a hydrogen car? I can fill my car cheaply now, so it doesn't matter to it at the moment.
It's an interesting one, isn't it? And my inner sceptic would wonder if it's anything to do with the forthcoming election. In terms of, you may think it's not so necessary to do things if fuel is cheaper, if we can afford those things. I mean, we'll all be screaming as soon as if it does go up again, and looking to do some other things. But surely, regardless of whether it's cheap or expensive, we have that responsibility to not be relying on one thing and look for other alternatives and other options so that we have much more freedom. I do believe as well that the lights did go out, didn't they, not so long ago? And actually, despite all of the cynics saying that things like wind farms would never be able to cope under such in such circumstances, they kicked in and they did the job beautifully, so much so that none of you probably even noticed that the lights went out. So we do need that investment. We do need to not rely so much on the oil. But yeah, I agree. Certainly, filling up my tank of petrol isn't quite so expensive at the moment. And yes, I'm happy that gives me a few extra quid in my purse to spend on an extra bottle of plum next week.
I think we've got another question there from the lady in the centre.
Through my school sort of education, we were posed the same question of, fossil fuels aren't always going to be around, and what are we going to do when they do run out? The problem is now is that's 10 years later, and I'm not at school anymore, and these young people in front of us have been hearing the same thing as well. So is there anything that you would, Robbie came up with a reason why, but can you think of a strategy, perhaps, to change people's minds? So either of you, or Laura, because Laura's been
certainly from my perspective, I think the government does have a responsibility, and it doesn't matter which government's in place, they have a responsibility to help us make better choices. Rob talked about the individualism. But if we can make better choices in terms of where we spend our money, what we do with our money, how we can recycle. There's an elderly lady that lives not far from me who has one of these great big recycling bins, and she doesn't fill it up because she can't then wheel it out for the bin man. So she now feels absolutely distraught that she can't do her recycling, but she's too frail to be able to do it. Now, we've actually worked this out now, and a bunch of neighbours will kind of help her with it. But prior to that, surely it's a case of, let councils, let governments find a way of making it easy for people to do the things that help